Hello! Welcome to episode 76 of Levels Plus Whenever, the show that cannot have a consistent backdrop. Well, hello! I'm interrupting the episode because I got a pickup. And as you could tell, the backdrop changed yet again. With the heat, I was concerned about all of these. So now they're here. I got the Ghost Trick Collector's Edition from Japan, and I wanted to quickly open it up and take a look at it. So the box itself is cute. A little closer to the camera. And if you look real close on the moon, there's the time motif that they use, which I think is pretty cool. And then there's the game itself. This is an amazing game. I don't know if I've talked about it enough on here, but it is an amazing game. The inside has directions on how to play in Japanese, and then I have a code, which I will not show you because I need to put it into my Switch to get all of the bonus stuff. Now, I said this was a collector's edition, and the reason for that is this little extra bit that comes with it. Now, this is all in Japanese, so I will not be able to explain it very well, but this is basically an escape room simulator that they collaborated with a company called Scrap. Let's go ahead and open it up and see what's inside. So we've got a little booklet that has story bits in there, and then there's these various little foldouts that show scenes from the game with a whole bunch of numbers attached to them. And then here's this. Trying to get it that the glare's not too bad. And then here are some instructions. How to play in Japanese. And then you've got 3 envelopes that are included. So 1, 2, 3. So these are actually taped shut. So I will probably leave them that way for now. But I imagine that there's clues or something inside of there. And yeah, that's basically what it is you can play a little miniature escape room based on the game. But anyway, I digress. You're not here to listen to me talk about my setup. You're here to listen to me talk about Tears of the Kingdom, finally. Which I'm very excited to just talk about. Now, the reason why I'm even recording this intro is to give a little bit of a spoiler warning, because I'm going to be playing the game while I talk about it. And in that process, I've beaten it. So I have access to a lot of things that are very late game in my inventory, on my character, in the game world itself. So I'm going to just throw that out there now, that I will be playing a version of this game that has beaten it. So there will be stuff happening in the game world that if you are trying to not have spoilers, you probably just want to skip this. So Tears of the Kingdom takes what Breath of the Wild brought to the Zelda franchise and supersizes it. It's 3 times the game, if not more, and that's just really the map. On top of that, it refines so much of what made Breath of the Wild good. It softens a lot of the more irritating aspects of Breath of the Wild, giving options where you didn't have options before. for example, and brings everything to a very satisfying and very rewarding experience. This is one of the greatest video games ever made. There is no question of that in my mind. And Breath of the Wild was also one of the greatest video games ever made. There will be people that prefer Breath of the Wild because the scale and the scope of Tears of the Kingdom is exhaustive. The 6 years of development makes a lot of sense, having played through this game, because there's just so much here. But the beautiful thing is that I don't feel like any particular part of this game feels like it was lazily crafted. There's hundreds of caves. Each one feels unique. There's a couple that are very similar, but they're not identical. A la Oblivion, where I really just felt like I was wandering into the same thing over and over and over again. That was my biggest issue with Oblivion. I'm so glad that they didn't do that here. I love exploring in video games. It is one of my absolute favorite things about the medium, is that sense of discovery, that sense of wonder, that sense of adventuring. And Tears of the Kingdom takes the core of what made Breath of the Wild such a beautiful update to the original NES Legend of Zelda in those aspects and amplifies it. There's so much to look for in Tears of the Kingdom. I have spent a long time playing this. I have played over 160 hours of this game. You can see a completion rate in the corner of the map. It's 53.61% completed. I have so much more to do. I have so much more to do in this game, despite having completed the story completely, 100%. Got the story all done. Found all of the teardrop memories. Got the Master Sword. Got all of the sages. Beaten Ganondorf. I've done everything that the game basically asked me to do, and I still have over 40% to figure out. It's exhaustive how much stuff is crammed into Tears of the Kingdom. But I love that. I actually had to convince myself to stop after I got the majority of the costumes. There's still a few I need to get, but I got everything costume-wise that's just out there. I need to go find the rest of the special weapons. I haven't done that yet. And there's still, like, oodles of side quests to do. There's just so much in this game to do, and I love that. Link controls better. He still is a little bit more slippery than I'd like. I will admit that. That is something about Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom Link, is that he's not a big fan of staying on small platforms. So if you try to just like scoot up here, for example, you can see that his momentum almost carried him off that platform. If I didn't let go of the stick, I would have absolutely just plummeted off of there without any problems. So he can be a little squirrely still, and that's probably the one thing about Tears of the Kingdom that I'm most annoyed with, is Link's squirreliness. All of his powers from Breath of the Wild are essentially gone. He has an entirely new set of powers outside of Amiibo and the map and the camera that you can use in this game to do different things. So, Recall. Recall lets you rewind time. So, let's get something that can cut down a tree. not it. I always forget that that doesn't act like a scythe, it acts like a spear. It throws me every time. Okay, so I knocked over the tree. But if I recall that tree, okay, obviously not the best example. So let's do this. I grabbed the tree with the Ultra Hand, which is another one of the new moves, which lets you grab and manipulate things. I'm going to drop it. You can see now that there's a path that this tree has taken. So if I recall, it will rewind the tree back to where it was when it started, which is really cool. I love that about this game. So the Ultra Hand, let's just grab this tree since this tree is our example. The Ultra Hand lets you combine things with other stuff. So I have just combined it with one of these pieces of wood. And then I can grab all these other pieces of wood and attach it that way. So now all of these pieces of wood are attached to each other. You can do this to make all kinds of interesting things, which is pretty cool. Fuse. So I don't have a weapon that I can fuse with anything, but we'll just grab this rock hammer. This sword was originally a sword, but I attached a rock to it. So what I'm going to do is, because I have this ability, I'm going to go ahead and take that rock off of there, and I'll show you how it works. So I'm going to fuse this stone with the broadsword, and now I have an axe, which is a little bit different than what I had before. So I'm going to go ahead and destroy that, and we'll grab something else. And then I can grab, like, this board. And now I have basically a way to shoot wind. I'm going to go ahead and destroy the board. And then there was an herb over here. Normally you wouldn't want to do this, but you can attach the herb to your sword. And so on and so forth. You can also do this with your shields. So I will pull up the shield I have that I've attached a flux core to. It's very impractical, but it looks cool. And then the Master Sword can also be fused as well. I don't remember what exactly I fused it with. It was with a Flux Construct 3 core. And it puts a nice little rune on there, which is cool. I like that. I'm going to go back to the shield I had. You can also do that with arrows. So let's say that I want to get some target practice and shoot my log. I can attach a fire fruit to it, which will give it fire properties. And then now I've got something lit up. And it destroyed those boards. A regular arrow would just stick to it. So there's all kinds of just really neat stuff that is going on with the fuse system in this game. It's arguably the biggest change mechanically. Last but not least, in terms of the fusing Ultra Hand stuff, is something that kind of combines those things and is a big part of the fun of this game, is the auto build. So I don't have any of this stuff on hand. I don't know if I have enough Zonite on hand either. I do. Good. I'm glad I grabbed some last time I was in the depths, which we'll get to in a minute. So this is my favorite thing that I have made. It is a glider with a cart underneath with 3 fans and a steering stick. So, since I didn't have any of the parts, all of these are fictional. They're made up parts. And now I can fly. I can fly around until it just decides that it doesn't want to work anymore. And you can see I've got a meter for this stuff. That's the Zonai charge meter. And eventually I'll run out of batteries. When you start the game, you only have one. So you can imagine that you're not going to get very far with just one battery doing a craft of this scale and scope. And you'd be right. So one of the things that you'll definitely want to do is get more batteries so you can do cool stuff like this. The paraglider is here, making its return. It's very handy. There's one more power though. And this one is a big one that helps address one of the big issues with Breath of the Wild. It's called Ascend. So if you remember, climbing is a major mechanic in Breath of the Wild. But it's long, it can be tedious, it drains your stamina, and if it rains, you really can't do it. So it was a bit of a hamper to be able to do that constantly. However, they added Ascend. And what Ascend does is that it lets you travel through a ceiling straight up to the other side. And it is a wonderful tool that really alleviates a lot of that tedium and frustration that climbing had in Breath of the Wild. And is one of the major reasons why I think that this is the better game, is because it gives the player an opportunity to work around that, and you get it really early. So you don't have to be frustrated because it's raining. You can try to find another way around. So in the overworld, there's quite a few changes. This is not the same Hyrule as before, as you can tell. Like, I've been hanging out at Lookout Landing, which is outside of Hyrule Castle. And this wasn't here in the first game. So there's a town, basically, that is now here. Pura is located here now. That's where you want to go for the main quest stuff. So it's an important location. All of the various towns in the game have had something happen to them that has changed them drastically. And there's a bunch of new landmarks and caves, which are an entirely new system of exploration in this game, which makes so much sense. There was hardly any caves in Breath of the Wild, and now there's over 100. Excuse me while I beat up this Yiga clay. And the art design for this game takes what Breath of the Wild originally had for the Wii U, and while it was a Switch game as well, I think that this game is optimized for the Switch and looks gorgeous. It is definitely pushing the Switch very hard. I am sure you noticed a little bit, especially if you are frame rate conscious, that when I was flying around earlier, that the frame rate just kind of took a bit of a nosedive. And there's a lot of concessions to get this game to work. You can tell that a lot of the background detail is much more lower quality, but you can still see it, which I think is very important. Basically, all the enemies that were in the original game are back, but there's more now. So it's not just like Bobokins and Listolfos. There's a much wider variety, which is good. They brought back a few iconic enemies, likes. Those were gravely missing in the last game, and now they're here, and they are perfect. They brought Gleelox back from the original Legend of Zelda, and they are the new mini-boss challenge. I love fighting them, but they are intense and they are hard. We've got one of our little bunny bloopies. I had to remember what their name was. Bloopies have a new purpose. They still drop rupees, but they will lead you to caves. So here's a cave right here. I've explored this particular cave at least 2 or 3 times, but they do refill enemies because the Blood Moon concept is still in this game. Those are one of the new enemies. I think they're called Horrorkins, and they are kind of a pain in the ass because they are from the ceiling. So you're gonna have to do a lot of bow stuff, and they usually have these really long spears. So they have a bit of range. And they will attack from the ceiling as well. But yeah, they do, like, this is a decent weapon. That they built. There's a whole bunch of new plants and stuff. There's bright bloom seeds. You may have noticed when I was showing off all of the various rooms earlier that I don't have bombs. You saw that explosion when the Horriblin was attacking me, and that was a bomb flower. They brought bomb flowers back to replace those. So now bombs are a resource that you have to be very mindful of, which I think is a good change. I like that change. I'm still got to send on, so this is a good example of using it. You can use it to climb up to this platform to get the goodies that are up here. And I actually have too many bright bloom seeds now. I've maxed out. What is the max for those anyway? 999. Just get an arrow or 2 out of it. Unfortunately, the Master Sword still has limited use, and it's still pretty brief. I was hoping that that might be something that they would make it last longer, but I understand that they didn't want to just give you a weapon that you could use 100% of the time. That was pretty solid. They wanted you to use the, yes, it's still here, broken weapons mechanic. The deteriorating weapons mechanic. So, the fuse system does help alleviate that a bit. You are encouraged heavily to fuse weapons with various things. So you can see here I have a silver boss Bobokin, if I remember correctly. That's what I'm using. Yeah, 2-handed axe. So this is a claymore, a royal claymore that's been merged with that part to make a much more powerful weapon that has improved durability because of the monster part attached to it. So this game continues to want you to push yourself to find new gear for your swords, your bows, and your shields, which is fine. I think it's better in this game because they've done a better job of making it more understandable and more like it's just less of an issue in this game. And it's fun. Like, once you actually get some decent parts from monsters, you'll be doing all kinds of cool stuff. You can use rock hammers to deal with bomb walls, since if you run out of bomb flowers, you're not completely stuck. So a lot of the changes are here to kind of counteract stuff. So I've mentioned earlier about climbing. That climbing in the rain, never fun. Climbing up wet surfaces, you don't feel like you get anywhere. So in this game, they've added an attribute and a costume: slip resistance. It's still not as slip resistant as I would like. But if you throw this froggy suit on, or if you find critters that provide slip resistance, you can climb up stuff when it rains, which it's about to do, actually. So I can kind of show how that works here in a minute. And that's really nice. That's a really nice change, because that honestly was one of the more frustrating parts of Breath of the Wild for me, personally, was the fact that I just could not climb and explore whenever it rained. It was basically like I'd be up halfway up a mountain, and then it'd start raining, and you just have to sit there and wait for the rain to end. Now with Ascend, and now with the slip resistance, you can at least have a better time exploring than you did before. And that, I think, is really important. The fuse mechanic also kind of changes how you interact with the world, because there's just stuff everywhere for you to potentially fuse things with. And I think that's just a really smart design choice on Nintendo's part. Alright. We've explored the ground pretty well. We've gone into a cave, which is really the biggest mechanical change to the core Zelda experience. Here's the rain. So let's just do a really quick test. So here's me climbing with no help. Okay, so I slip, I lose stamina. If I were to equip the froggy suit, I wasn't 100% sure if it was actually called Froggy, but thankfully it proved me right. You get a little bit more coverage on the ground, and you don't slip as fast. You'll still slip. It's not slip-proof, it's resistance. But it's better. It's an improvement in every way, except not slipping at all. So, here's the map. It's big. It's huge. It's enormous. It's just like the last game. I haven't explored everything. We go up here, though. Oh, look. There's stuff up here. There's an entire sky situation that I'm going to just briefly teleport to. And this is where you start the game, is up in the sky. Actually, you start the game in this particular area I warp to, which is very convenient for what I'm going to be talking about. So this is your tutorial area right here. This is where you start. This is where my first video entirely took place. I'm much better equipped to deal with it now. The game's story hinges a lot on the Zonai people. And there was hints of the Zonai in Breath of the Wild, but you actually get to meet one, actually two, here. And they are very important to the overall flow of the game. I'm going to not talk too much about story stuff, even though I'm playing this end game version. Wow, having the paraglider here is so nice. Because I feel that that's an important part of the experience, is looking for those teardrops and getting those memories. Discovering what's going on, how the Zonai history intertwines with Hyrule's, all that fun stuff. I think that's something that I will let you discover on your own. But as I was saying, the art direction in this game is incredible. Like, this really just feels like a Ghibli movie brought into my hands to control how it works. And I love that so much, because I love Ghibli stuff. And oh, there's a random Korok here. We'll just go ahead and... Hey, that's the direction I expected you to go. So Koroks are still around. There's still oodles of them. You'll get a slightly better gift this time, I think, if you collect them all than just a poop rock. But there's this pink You see that pinkish thing, and yes, you can just like straight up fall from the sky and descend to the ground. But there's some pink goop over there. I'm sure you noticed it earlier when I was looking at Hyrule Castle. So let's go ahead and wander over that way. And while I'm gliding, you don't start with the paraglider. You earn it actually a little bit later than the tutorial area. And the amiibo this time are really kind of like getting these paraglider pieces. So it feels a little less essential in this game than it did for Breath of the Wild. And unfortunately the wolf ability is not there in this game. It would have been great if it actually did make that transition, but I think Nintendo's decided, you know, people might not have Twilight Princess for the Wii U at this stage, and this is a Switch-only game, so we'll just get rid of that functionality. So this is a hole to another area of the game. That opens up to you, called the Depths. And the Depths are as big as the overworld, more or less. It's a little bit more blocked off. But it is a huge expanse to explore. It has its own unique stuff going on down here. The Yiga clan, who we ran into a little bit earlier, have their headquarters and their operations all down here. They have very little on the surface. They have like 3 bases on the surface, in contrast to dozens, I would argue, down here. And they're a major side quest point. And they're clowns, still. I love the Yiga clan. They're my favorite antagonists outside of Ganondorf in this game because they are ridiculous and ineffective. They just can't do anything, and I love the comedic vibe that they have. I love it down here. I think it's so cool. It's very, very desolate, though, so it can get hard being down here for like hours because it just feels so isolating and I guess depressing, which I think is the point. There are points that you can ascend out of here. I don't know if there's any conveniently located near where I'm standing at the moment. Probably not. There's usually like pillars that just go straight up and they lead to interesting locations. But there's unique enemies down here. There's Froxes, for one. You can refight all of the bosses down here as well, if you want to re-engage with those. There's new temples, which are more Zelda traditional-like. They're not quite the same as something from like Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, but they're closer in line with that than what Breath of the Wild brought, and they're unique locations. They're not all the same backdrop with hardly any unique elements to them beyond how they rotate or move. And you get to partner up with various characters. And the cool part is you can continue to hang out with them all as you unlock them, which is the best thing ever. The only part about this is that you can't control them easily. So like right now you can see that I've got a Let's Go coming from my Rito friend here, whose name I forget. It starts with a T. He will give me a gust. So if I jump in the air and start floating, he will give me a wind boost, which will let me travel a little bit faster and give me some momentum, which is very nice. But all the other ones do different things. So like Sidon will give me a water shield, which if I then choose to attack, will send out a wave of water. I can ride this mech. I can give the arms on this mech weapons to smash things with, and I can put like a fan on the back to help with mobility. It's really cool. It's really, really cool how you just gain all these extra things. And you don't have to have them all out at once. You can assign which ones you like. I like to have them all out because I think it's fun. But, like I said, the interface for interacting with them is a little clunky because you have to press A when you're next to one of them to interact. And that can get difficult in the heat of battle. Riku, for example, tends to kind of fight up close. So if you're more of a distance person, you want to use her power, you have to get close to her, and she might be really next to an enemy. They all have charges, so other than our mech here. The mech runs on your Zonai charge. So if I were to send our Goron friend here on a little adventure, he will eventually come back, and then he'll have a meter refill, so you can't just reuse him over and over and over again, which I think is fair. So you could just wander around with your 5 sage friends, and they'll help you fight. They won't talk to you unless you interact with them, because these are not the real sages, they are their shadows. Except for our mech friend here, who is a real sage. I forget her name. And down here you'll find all kinds of legacy treasure. So, for instance, let me get into my costumes. So down here you'll find all of this stuff. The Fierce Deity mask and outfit. The Mask of Awakening, which is horrifying. Various retro costumes. All that stuff is down here. But a good chunk of the special equipment like this is located down here, as well as weapons related to the history of the franchise. So you can get the Fierce Deity Blade. You can get the sword from Wind Waker. The boomerang from Wind Waker. Stuff like that. You can even get homages to the original Legend of Zelda's sword. Which I think is really cool. I love that. So, like, if I wanted to wander around as Ocarina of Time Link, I could do that. If I wanted to wander around as, like, historic Link from the original Zelda through, like, Link to the Past and the original Link's Awakening, I've got that option. If I want to be Link's Awakening Remake Link, I could do that. Don't recommend it. There's also a lot of new equipment in this game. On top of the majority of the original game's equipment coming back, the one that's missing is the Gerudo women's clothes. That's not here at all, and given the transphobic way you got it in the other game, it's probably for the best. Thankfully, that element seems to have been completely exercised from this game. Thankfully, that was arguably the biggest negative mark in terms of story beats and narrative. Just don't be transphobic. So I'm glad that Nintendo did not repeat that mistake again here. The writing in this game is phenomenal. The voice actors are all fantastic. I think Matt Mercer is a wonderful Ganondorf and does a lot to bring out that character. I do feel that Ganondorf perhaps is a little underwhelming in the end, unfortunately. While I love his visual aesthetic, I love his voice work, I love the malice that he brings, not Calamity Malice, mind, but the actual malice. I felt that the boss fight with him was a little disappointing because I found a way to cheap it. And just basically removed any of the animosity and difficulty out of that fight just because I was able to rush him on a particular move that you're normally not supposed to rush him on, and clearly the game was not designed for that mentality. and it works, and you're just kind of able to body him really easily that way. Let's get out of the depths. I think we've been down here long enough. Let's go find a nice sky view tower, scenic view. But in terms of things that I wish were done a little differently, I do think that Ganondorf's final fight, not the absolute last bit, which is a phenomenal set piece that I'm not going to spoil, was a little weak. I do feel that Link being squirrely still in terms of his controls continues to be the hardest thing about this game to enjoy. It's like you want Link to do one thing, but because you held the stick for a second too long, he's going to plummet off and instead do something else. Like fall off the platform you're trying to be on, or leap off of it, or just any multitude of things. Durability can still be annoying, especially in the early goings, but once you get farther along, it's less of an issue. Here, I'll just land here, and we'll kind of wrap up my thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom. But honestly, like, they did everything I hoped that they would, outside of refining Link's controls just a touch more, to make this the best Zelda game that has ever been. It really is. There's just so much to do. There's so much to explore. There's so much to fight. There's so much to interact with. I think that, on the whole, this is a top 5 game for me, and I'm having a really hard time letting go of Fire and Three Houses in the top 5. But I genuinely think this is the 5th greatest game I've ever played, and it might rise. It could continue to go up. There's just so much done well, and it's so engaging, it's so thrilling, that even the little nitpicks of Ultra Hand being a little clunky to use, running out of stamina at the worst time, which is a Breath of the Wild carryover, running out of arrows, like all these little things just don't really matter in the end, because that's just part of being an adventurer and trying to find your way through this complex, ever-changing environment that Link has entered, all in the hopes of reconnecting with Zelda and defeating Ganondorf. It's a beautiful game. One of the most memorable ones I think I've played, and one that's going to stick with me a long time. This is a very long video. So if you stuck through it, thank you. Thank you for joining me as I talk about what I thought worked well and things that I hope a future game will continue to refine. But Tears of the Kingdom is easily my game of the year, and I don't think anything's going to come close to knocking it off that perch. So we'll see. We'll see. We got 6 more months. Till the next time, my friends. I do have a Smash character video in the pipeline as well, so that'll be kind of a in-between. And we might have a Taito Arcade Memories Volume 2 reveal trailer, reveal stream at some point in the near future if they follow what they did last year. That might be more August, but we'll find out. So that's kind of what the future in videos looks like here, as well as Shoot 'em Up Summer, which I have pulled together all of the shoot 'em ups I have access to that I want to play, and I'm going to shuffle 20 of them. So I have 111 possible games to play. We're going to shuffle 20 of them if I played them or not, and we're going to go through them. And I think that'll be fun. That'll be a nice change of pace from what I usually do. Okay, I think that's all the stuff to wrap up this video. Have a wonderful set of days until I see you again. Take care, friends.